Hello, I'm Anthony. I make a lot of content on this channel about plugin tutorials. I make very deep, sometimes very long tutorial series covering individual plugins. It occurred to me just the other day while I was working on this piece of music, imaginatively entitled 26th of April at the moment because it hasn't yet acquired the personality to give it a title. It occurred to me that I don't very often give practical examples of the use of this information. What's the point in watching a 5, 10, 20 episode series if I'm not giving you real world illustrations of the point of having all of this information? The second subject we're going to cover today is that of decision paralysis. This is owning so many plugins that you don't know which one to use. A very common problem that I'm sure you've experienced as well. We're going to do it from the perspective of a single instrument, the Korg Triton. Now, I bought this plugin a number of years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and this is the first time I think I've ever used it in a piece of music. And part of the reason for that is that I never owned a Triton. They were released in 1999. This was the flagship Korg synthesizer predominantly through the early 2000s. And even though I was very familiar with seeing it in music videos at the time, I don't actually have any practical context in which to put this synthesizer, and so there was never any reason for me to use it. So it basically just sat there gathering dust. So what I decided when I started writing 26th of April was that I was going to use the Korg Triton as much as possible. I was going to browse the presets, try to use this as inspiration for the piece of music that I was writing, and basically see how far I could get just using this plugin alone to write a piece of music. Now, as you're going to see today, didn't accomplish that entirely. There's a mini V down here because there was a particular sound that I wanted that the Triton wasn't really cutting it, so I went elsewhere. But what we're going to do is have a listen to a few different moments in this piece of music. And I've just this second realised that this introduction is too long. We're going to get straight into it. Let's listen to some music. Few notes of the beginning of a little mini V line there, but basically all of the synth sounds that you just heard were generated by the Triton. And if you don't mind me saying, I think it sounds pretty good at the moment. It's a long way from finished, but what we've got so far sounds pretty good. The first thing that should be pretty obvious to you when you listen to that is that I've come to the conclusion that the Korg Triton is a very digital synthesizer. Now obviously it's a PCM synth from 1999, of course it is. But that's not what I'm saying. That's where its strength lies. I'm not going to use this synthesizer to try to generate a violin sound or a piano sound. PCM can do those things, and actually Korg do them better than most. But really, if I'm going to pick up this synthesizer, if I'm going to choose this plugin, I'm going to concentrate on what it does well. So let's strip out the bass and rhythm and just listen to the keyboards. It's a very clean, very modern sound, exactly what I would expect. This is the Triton starting to describe its personality to me, and I'm putting all of this stuff in my memory bank so that when I come to write pieces of music in the future and I'm faced with that paralyzing decision paralysis, why am I supposed to use the Triton? Well, these are examples of sounds that it does well, and I'm going to remember this stuff. And because I used exclusively every track that you see here, these are all Triton instances. I consider this as like musical muscle memory, and when I have particular needs for these kinds of sounds in the future, I'm going to know that the Triton is going to serve me well. So let's dip into one of the presets and have a look at what I've done. I'm going to choose this Dirty Wounds preset, which, as always with my naming conventions, they start from basic presets and then I edit them. The easiest way to show you the edits I've made to a sound is to duplicate it, throw all of my changes away and get back to the stock sound. So this copy of Dirty Wounds that we have open at the moment is the core preset. The preset as I have it sounds like this, and it's very quiet. Radically different. So how did I get there? Let's take all of the keyboard sounds out, just have a quick listen to the music behind the bass and rhythm, and now it's too loud. If I bring that preset back in, so this is an arpeggio that comes with the preset. That's basically what you're hearing. The notes are an arpeggiated sound. Generally speaking, if you're going to use arpeggios, you want them to lock into the song. You need to understand how the plugin does that. First of all, you need to find your arpeggio settings. That doesn't take a genius, it's in the ARP tab. But now you're faced with this information, how do you actually parse that? How do you make sense of it? Well, sort and latch are all about the order of the notes that get played, and that's I'm not particularly concerned about that. I think I actually disengaged latch for this preset, I can't exactly remember. The important thing, however, is that key sync is on and keyboard is off. Key sync is what locks the arpeggio to playing as soon as you play notes. Keyboard instructs the Triton to play a second copy of those notes. Basically, it holds the notes down as played and then plays the arpeggio over the top. Well, I don't want that. I just want the arpeggiated notes to be played. So generally speaking, and there are quite a few arpeggios in this piece of music, I'm going to choose exactly that combination of options every time, sort and key sync on. What that means is that every chord that I play, I'll play a C major here. Every single time I play a C major chord, regardless of the order in which I play the notes, I'll play it top down this time. It sorts itself out, the Triton figures out what to play, which means I'm going to get consistency with the notes that get reproduced. I'm also determining that every time I play that chord, the arpeggio starts immediately from the beginning every time. So I've now got that arpeggio in complete control. The notes are fine, the arpeggio's under control, but it felt like it was all just mushing together a little bit too much and I wanted some clarity. A really nice, simple go-to for me if I'm searching for that kind of sound is the marimba, because obviously they're very sharp, percussive sounds. I'm not ashamed to say I'm hugely influenced by King Crimson's Discipline at the moment. I'm listening to it a lot, and so it's having a large impact on the music that I write. So we're using a combination of xylophone and marimba, the original synthesized sound that came from the preset. I love the arpeggio, the sequence of notes is great, just wasn't the right sound for me, and PCM synths do this kind of stuff, the xylophone, marimba, that whole family of sounds just work really well with these Korg workstations. So I'm using a little bit of familiarity with the family of synthesizers to say, I bet this is going to sound good when I dial it up. And sure enough, it does. It's got that little bit of dirt to it, little bit of grit. Where's that coming from? From the effects. These have also been tweaked. So I've been in and individually edited these effects to add that little bit of dirt, just cut some of the smoothness of those percussive sounds away. So I've dipped into multiple aspects of this plugin there. I needed to understand how the arpeggiator works, how the oscillators work, and how I can dial up different sounds. Then I also need to understand how the effects work, which on the Triton is reasonably complex because we have this routing matrix where you can feed inserts one into another, but you also have master sends. So understanding how all of that works really feeds into my ability to say, here's the original preset, what was good about it, what do I want to change, how quickly can I accomplish that? But once you really kind of pull the thing to pieces and spend a few hours learning how the instrument works, you've got all of this new stuff at your fingertips. Let's have a look at another example of a sound. Go somewhere else in the piece. So this is a bridge section where I've pulled all of the music away and we're really leaning quite heavily on this res down preset. It sounds like this. Listen to the fluttery stuff. I absolutely love all of that articulating stuff going on in the background. It's a very nice pad, and once again, the digital synthesizer world, the Korg's going to do this really well. But those extra articulations in the background and all of the little fluttery bits, that's what really caught my imagination. And that's not what this preset sounds like out of the box. Let's have a listen to the original. Throw it away, come back to it, and now this is what we've got straight out of the box. It's also significantly louder than the edited version, so I'll just bring it down to mix. That filter sweeping pad is much, much louder now, and all of the lovely tinkling articulation stuff is almost inaudible. I only just caught it. If you let it go long enough, you get the ding, ding, ding kind of noises in the background, and I thought, oh, that's lovely and tasteful. I want a little bit more of it though, and the big kind of, you know, crashing filter sweep, a bit too much. Let's get those under control. Now, as soon as we look at the oscillators, we know exactly what's going on. We've got the pad, the detuned super, which is a super saw. That's where my filter sweep's coming from. Let's pull that. In fact, I'll take it all the way down. The second oscillator is doing this. And that's quite subtle. That's quite a soft sound. Now, I could boost it using my effects units. If I go into the effects bank, there's, oh, where are we? Yeah, there's a graphic equalizer on channel 1. So I could tinker with it in there. I haven't currently, so I won't today. The most important thing, however, is just bring in a little bit of this pad back. Make sure my levels are right. And now this sound is significantly quieter than the original preset, which is why I had to turn it down when I switched over. Now I'll just boost the entire track and I've balanced that mix properly. Let's go back to the edited version and have a quick listen to the second phrase. Yeah, without those high frequencies being accentuated, a lot of that sweetness was being lost, and I don't want it to be drowned in a huge LPF sweep. Final example today is this preset that features at the beginning of the piece. Let's quickly duplicate it, throw it away and come back to it. Completely out of sync. Again, this is an idea of finding the sound that you like, but then getting it under control. Remember those Arpeggio settings that we need to dip into? Take keyboard off, turn key sync on. Now it'll play in time with the song. This is quite a subtle arpeggio. It's just basically repeating that chord sequence. If I held it down long enough, so that's the arpeggio as played, and you can see I've then chopped up those notes to bring it under some sort of control. I could have just basically turned the arpeggiator off and played it in naturally, but I was quite happy with the feeling, so I left it be. The sound that we actually have as edited though is like this. So I've taken away some of that softness, which I thought was basically getting lost in the mix. But I've also introduced another effect in this preset, which is a random filter. So basically every note that gets played is having a different kind of filter applied to it. Let's have a quick look at the settings. It generates a much more interesting sound. That's flat or dry. I'll click on the Korgs to set it to dry. So every one of those presets is fairly close to the stock sound. You can hear the DNA of the original preset in there. And as I was browsing through the presets, that more than 90% of the stuff just gets immediately thrown away because it's not gelling with the vibe that you're going for. But when you find something reasonably close, it's very, very rare that it completely nails it right out of the box. Or very, very rare is too much. Maybe 50-50, something like that. This Blade Run sound, for instance, is straight out of the box. Awesome pad sound. I didn't need to do a single thing to that because it sounds amazing immediately. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Don't be afraid to use presets right out of the box. It's completely fine to do so. This Blade Run is going to sound great. But when it came time for a mini Moog line, the Triton is not doing that job. It's not going to generate an analog lead sound like that. And that's exactly what I wanted. I did actually spend maybe 15-20 minutes scrabbling around in the Triton because I wanted to use the Triton exclusively. That was my kind of first directive. But in the case of it not pulling its weight, it simply couldn't do that thing well enough. Well, I've got this big library of already awesome sounds, and if I want that kind of singing lead line, that analog lead line, more often than not, I'm going to go to the Mini V. That preset itself was also curated. That's not straight out of the box. It's been edited by me, primarily just introducing unison and a lot more resonance. So there's the lead sound that I've used for the Mini V. I've engaged unison. I've messed around with the filter to make it poke through in the way that I wanted, fiddled with the various volumes. So I've basically tinkered that sound to my liking as well, from an understanding of how the Mini V works. So putting all that legwork in to understand how the synthesizer operates, 90% of the time you're going to use 10% of the information. But it's really nice to have those tools at your fingertips, so when you think, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I just applied a random filter to that thing, you know exactly where to go to and you can accomplish the task in 30 seconds. So now I've got a much better understanding of how the Korg Triton works. I understand its strengths and weaknesses. When I come to write pieces of music in the future, it's no longer going to be subject to that decision paralysis. What am I supposed to do with this thing? I'm going to have a much better and clearer understanding of when that instrument's going to be able to offer me something that I'm interested in hearing. Hope you've enjoyed this episode today. Please hit like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll see you again. Thanks very much.